Welcome to the Humble Warrior podcast. You guys, I'm so honored today to have Edward Hickerson from Hickerson Honey and Flowers on the podcast today. I first discovered this gentleman while watching Growing Floret, which follows the adventures, struggles, and insights of the world's biggest flower influencer, Erin Benzakeim. Edward's story was featured on the show. He's a beekeeper, flower farmer. He's an owner and a veteran. He was in the army, and we're going to talk about that. And he was just so inspiring. It was like a tractor beam of light. And I was like, I have to have this person on the podcast. So inspiring. So he talks about not only beekeeping and flower farming, producing honey and other products, but how all that translates to producing a strong mind. So I'm really excited to talk about your journey to success. Thank you so much for being on the show, Edward.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're just going to jump right in. Tell me about
Okay.
Edward. How did you get here?
Okay. So I got here. Well, it all starts with being in the Army, right? For you guys who have been in the Army, you know that it's a lot of roads, a lot of roadblocks. It's just a lot that entails when you become a soldier, right? And so I've had a few experiences in my military career that kind of hindered me or have held me back due to emotional feelings, just to, what happened in these circumstances. And so that kind of left me wounded. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I just had all this stuff going on. And there was something in me that wasn't going to allow PTSD to hold me down. I was going to fight back. Some people just take it, but I was one of those that wasn't going to take it because I didn't want that for myself. And so I had to find something that could stabilize my mind because I was pretty much all over the place. Wow, out of control, not making good decisions, getting into trouble, just a lot of things going on. But once I got my hands into the dirt, once I started gardening, once I started planting flowers, once I started beekeeping, my life changed, my mind changed because purpose. There's this one that one word. It's just one word, but it means a million things. And I think when we find our purpose, we find who we are, right? We find who we truly are. Because when you serve in the military, I served for 12 years, you lose who you are, right? Because if you are a kind-hearted, soft individual, you become a cold-hearted, hard individual by the time you're done, right? Because everything is about kill, these different things, these different tasks, all the stuff you have to go through. So it's like getting out the Army and transitioning was just a huge failure in transition for me. But I was able to get it together by finding my purpose, and that's just nature. Getting into nature helped heal what I had going on the inside. And so therefore, I'm a better man now. I'm a stronger man now. My mindset is strong. I went from being a military sergeant to having a no quit idea, having a no quit attitude to want to quit in everything, want to not follow through in nothing, and so that's just kind of how I got here.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I resonate a lot with your story for a lot of reasons. I'm also a veteran. I'm actually on active duty right now. I've got almost 22 years in, and everything you're saying, I'm just like, oh yeah, like it's so, I love my people, but they're like, we are so draining. But I think to your point, like for some people, it might be hard to hear, like, it's cold-hearted, it's all about killing, but that's what it is, right? Like, we're all about, I win, you lose. The enemy is going to lose every time. That's the mindset that's drilled into us. But flower farming and beekeeping is on the opposite end of the spectrum. So, like, when you
Opposite end.
come from a place of like scarcity mindset and anger and all that stuff, right? To get to this place of like connection with nature and like putting your fingers in the dirt, like you said, this is a really great example of like the struggle that the average listener has is they're engrossed in a world that is all about everybody for themselves. It's inherently selfish. The people that listen to this podcast are very heart-centered. They want to be of service, they want to be loving, they want to be connected, and they have their own like destabilized lives because that part that longs to connect doesn't really know how. So I am so excited to hear how you were like, man, I was in the pit, right? Like I was just in it, and I got my fingers in the dirt, and now I found purpose. I have stabilized my mind, right? I did not allow PTSD to hold me down. And guys, if you check out his Instagram, we're going to link it in the show notes. It is so inspiring and fun to watch him do his thing. I would love to start back at when you're in the thick of it, and you said there was a part of you that was like, I'm not going to let PTSD hold me down. Like, where did that come from? Like, how did that develop, and how did you cling on to that? Because it's like the little mustard seed you needed to grow this beautiful life, right? But like, how did you do that?
It's interesting, and I'm so glad you asked that question because this is a platform in which I can speak my truth. And so, to be quite honest with you, I had reached a point where I wanted to take myself off the map. I didn't want to be here no more. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I have a dad that I have parents that love me so much, and they set me down, they talk to me. And from that conversation, I made a conscious decision that I'm better than that. I'm stronger than that. And you know what? Why would you do 12 years in the army and then turn around and do something like that? You know, you don't realize the impact you have on people. Even though you don't think you're impacting people, you just don't realize how many people love you, care about you, and want to see you around when you don't want to see yourself around, when you don't believe in yourself, when you feel like, you know what, I have nothing to offer this world. But after having that conversation with my parents, I got on my knees, I prayed to God, I asked him for strength. And then he began to give me this vision. He began to tell me, hey, you know what? I got a place for you. And it's going to be somewhere totally unexpected. So I was living in Seattle, Washington. I had been out there for about 10 years, and all my family is over on this side. So I moved all the way back home. And when I got home, I got in my backyard because this is the house I live in. It used to belong to my great grandparents, right? And so I remember as a kid running around helping my great grandparents pull from the garden back there. And as I went out there looking in my backyard, that's when God dropped that message in me. And so I began I ran to that, right? Because I needed a lifeline at that time. I needed something to pull me, to show me who I am, to show me that, you know, you got this, you're strong, you can live, you can have a good life. You're gonna make mistakes, but guess what? You can change that. And so from the minute I started gardening back there, man, I'm telling you, if for those of you who are listening, maybe it's not gardening for you, but it is something. And there is a purpose out there for you. You just have to find it. But I will tell you, once you find that purpose, life is uphill after that. It's a straight uphill after that. And you know what? You don't have to worry about anything else because your purpose is what lies in your heart. And a lot of us don't listen to what's in here. We listen to what's up here. But if you tap into here, that's going to take you where you need to be. And I have a saying: your heart translates your purpose to your brain, and your brain then executes. And that's how I live my life. You know, I lead from my heart, and sometimes that can get you in trouble. But for the most part, that's where I lead from, and it's just been such a blessing to be able to tap into nature, to be able to understand how nature reacts and acts. I mean, if you look at it, we only get to tap into probably 15% of God's creation while we're here on earth. So I have just grasped onto that. I love what I do. And you know what? I could care less what somebody has to say about me. You know, I've taken all type of flack. You know, he's this, he's that. You know, his lifestyle is this, but you don't know. And guess what? I'm going to keep growing flowers. I'm going to keep pushing these bees, and I'm going to keep doing my thing because that's what I believe is right. And because that's who I know I am. And that's just a big part of life is you got to know who you are and where you come from.
Ooh, oh my goodness, that is so powerful right there. And there's so many nuggets I want to dig into because, you talking about like digging in the dirt, and God reminded me of who I was when I was younger, right? And all those seasons of pulling flowers or fruits or whatever it might be from the garden. And it's funny because I also have PTSD and anxiety and like all the things, right? And my husband and I joke, he's retired now, but we're like, you don't leave the military without trauma. Like it just is a thing. But it's funny, like,
You'll get traumatized in some type of way.
sir, 100%. So, like, we laugh about it now, but I am a child exploitation specialist. So, working those types of cases has its own trauma. And it's really funny because I didn't realize it at the time, but for years, when things would get really bad with like a case or politics or whatever the drama was, right? I would go out back and weed my yard. Like my husband's like, "Man, I'm loving this. My yard's looking awesome." Cause like he doesn't like to weed and I'd just be back there like for hours. And it's so satisfying when I pull it out by the root and I'm like, "Oh, I got it," you know? And then when it breaks, sometimes it's just a reminder of, okay, you don't get them all, like it's going to grow back and then we can go back in there and work again. But I just thought it was really funny. I'm like, why weeding, you know? But there really is something magical about digging your fingers in the dirt and just the meditative elements and the mindfulness of
Yeah.
it. And you know, for you especially as a man, to your point, you're like, I don't care like what anybody says about me. I know who I am. But I have to say, you know, as someone who has worked in the military in law enforcement, and I have amazing clients who are very high achievers, seeing an Army veteran be like, yep, honey flower farmer, that's what I do, is unusual. And I wish more people would just, to your point, lead with their hearts and just be who they are, right? But how did you get from 12-year Army veteran, like getting in whatever trouble, right? To I know you talked about like the love that your parents had for you and the talk that they had, but it's one thing to decide in your head like I want to do this, right? But then the demons all come
Right.
back and it's like a fight. So how did you what's your process for overcoming when those little like gremlins want to come back and take over?
You know what? It's really that part. It's really a cultural thing, okay? Because I am an African American male, right? So when you dive into our history, and when you understand that at one point in time we were enslaved, right? Forced to do whatever on the plantation, right? Now, as you move yourself so far from that, I don't know, we're 60, 70 years, outside of that, we have evolved. And so now we're not forced to do anything, but we have the opportunity to go back to the land and draw some commerce, make a better life for ourselves. And, hey, everybody is not built to be, a farmer, but knowing what my people went through back then and knowing that they had to work all the day up, sun up to sundown and not receive a penny, it motivated me to say, you know what? I move my legacy forward. I move who I am forward by diving into this, because if I can make a stable, good life for myself, then guess what? My ancestors didn't die for no reason. And I love to keep that in my forefront, is knowing how much they sacrificed so that I could have the opportunity to do exactly what I'm doing right now, and that's growing flowers and doing beekeeping. I mean, that's really what it comes from, and it is unusual, but I like to tap into what's unusual.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. So you've brought up a couple elements that I love to talk about on this podcast, especially because the world and you know, the military is very like high achieving and we talk about excellence and integrity and like being the best and all this stuff. But and that's a very intellectual thing, right? And you talked about oftentimes we live up here in our brains, but we need to be living from our hearts. And you've talked about your spiritual practice a little bit and you've talked about your ancestry and basically saying like it is a privilege for me to get to, it sounds like, heal some of the wounds of the past, right? Like I'm not forced to work the land, which out of my control, like I'm choosing to do that and pay it forward, right? These past generations that came before me, like I know I am the answered prayer of my ancestors. And so
Yeah.
I have to pay it forward, right? And so when we talk about that level of connection, right, it's so much higher and less focused on me. It's I'm part of a much bigger thing that's
Yeah.
happening. And you talk about understanding your purpose, right? So it's like understanding what is your specific purpose? How do I fit into that bigger picture? And I'd love to unpack that a little bit more because
Okay.
I think a lot of people struggle with identifying what their purpose is or what their values are, right? So, what is your purpose and how did you figure out what that was?
Your purpose, in my opinion, okay, just in my opinion, I feel like in life you have to cater to the things you do best. It's your purpose is what you do best. A lot of us, we go to high school, we go to college, and we go get this degree, and this degree ain't even close to what we're supposed to be doing. But you gotta tap into what you do best and then run with that, right? So, for instance, if I would have started growing, but had all these complications, couldn't get it, couldn't do it, it didn't come natural, then I would know that that's not my purpose, right? So I feel like your purpose is what you do naturally. And so for me, it's all about service. That's the type of, I'm service driven, right? So my jobs outside of the Army, everything I've done outside the Army has been service driven. And so I knew that. I know that about my personality. I know that I'm suited best on the workforce in a customer service role, right? So I play to my strong points, right? And through time, you know your purpose is on point when opportunity falls from the sky that you didn't even ask for, that you didn't call for, that you didn't ask for, you didn't have your hand out. Somebody called you and said, hey, I got this opportunity. What do you want to do? And I'll bring it to this point. I own zero land, zero. But I have people in this town who knew me when I was a kid. So when I came back grown as a grown man, they said, you know what? I've got land. You got a dream? You want to grow flowers? You want to beekeep? Guess what? You come out on my land. I won't charge you. I won't put any pressure on you. Come out here and do what you do best. And so that opportunity presented itself. And ever since then, I've been running. And every day, every month, every year I'm in this, my mind grows. It gets stronger. It gets stronger because when you put a seed in the ground and you watch it grow, there's nothing more powerful that because as that seed grows, as that plant grows, you grow as well. And so it may sound corny and it may sound cliche, but I couldn't say it better than that. So that's what got me to my purpose is once I started putting plants in ground, once I started seeing you put a little time in, what it gives back, I thought, oh man, this is like the most amazing thing in the world. And my heart was so open to it. And my mind was so open to it. And the opportunity has just came without me having to ask for it. And so year after year, it may be a year go where don't no opportunity come. But then there might be a year come where it's just like opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And I just love the fact that I don't have to ask, it comes. And I think that's how you know you're on the right track.
Oh my goodness, that is so good. So first, I love that you were like, my purpose is doing what I do best. My purpose is what God created me to do. As long as I'm aligning myself, my behaviors with that, magic happens. And it's so funny because oftentimes humble warrior, so like this podcast is focused on self-doubt and fear and imposter syndrome, right? So it's the belief that you're not good enough or qualified for the work that you're called to do, and that eventually people are going to figure out you're not good enough for it, and bad things are going to happen, right? And so often I hear people say, when I point to like, hey, this is something that comes naturally to you, and they're like, but it's so obvious. And I'm like, yes, it's obvious to you because that's your gift. Like the gifts that you're given don't have to be hard, right? We have this belief, I think, in life oftentimes that like in order to be successful, you have to like strive and struggle for this thing. And if you look at, this is my personal belief, if you look at the truth of who God says you are, like God created you with a purpose, God has good things for you, right? Whatever struggle comes, even if you look at, okay, we're going to go biblical for a second, right? Like Paul is a great example I love to use. Like that dude was in prison being like, thank you, God, for being in prison. You know what I mean? And so it comes easy for you if you're walking in your purpose, right? And I love that you said opportunity just falls out of the sky when you're doing that, which is another thing I think a lot of people struggle with, which is, I have to create my own opportunity. But that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is if I just behave in alignment with my purpose, the opportunity comes. That
You
is,
know how we learned in the Army? Don't talk, execute, work. You put in the work. We don't want to hear you talk. We just want to see you work. And I think that's the point of the opportunity. If you work and the people see your passion, the people see your work, Somebody, a ram in the bush, somebody's gonna be like, you know what? I see that young man. I like what he's doing, and I want to help. So let me provide him with him or her with an opportunity. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to add that.
Oh my gosh, no, that's perfect. I love that so much. And okay, so opportunity falling out of the sky, because I would love to talk a little bit about the spiritual component of this, because
Mhm.
so often at the human level, again, it we think like I have to create the opportunity, right? Like and so often people get frustrated and burned out because they're working to your point, and they're like, but nothing's happening, right? So a lot of times I have to kind of coach that individual through, what is your spiritual connection like? And spiritual connections are complicated and difficult. And I know, like, for me, I stepped away from God for about a decade, but it was because I had to come back and learn how to connect with that higher power on my, like, in a way that God created me to connect with Him. And whether you call it like manifesting or whatever, right? Like, how do you interpret that, like, intellectually, when we talk about how God interacts with Edward, and as these opportunities fall out of the sky, like, what is your thought process around that, that maybe somebody could be encouraged by or try on?
I'm a preacher's kid. My dad's a pastor. So being born and raised in the church, it's kind of hard to get away from that. And when you get in life's turmoil or life's tornado, you learn to call on Jesus, right? You learn to call on the Lord and ask him for whatever he can do to stop whatever's going on, right? So the spiritual aspect has been put in me since I was a youngster, but you as the individual has to tap into that. It's not something your mom and dad can do. It's not something your cousin can do, not something your friend can do. You have to search God out for yourself. And I think when you search God for yourself, once he knows you're doing that, then I think he gives you that love, that grace, that opportunity. I think he pours water, but he's waiting on you to acknowledge that it's not you. It's his will for you that matters, right?
Yeah.
So if I wanted to be like you, if I want to be a cop, right? But that ain't his will, I can do whatever I want to do to try to make that thing happen, but it's not gonna go. Or it's just gonna be one hell of a ride, right? But it's important. And a lot of people don't even understand, how do you get to God's will? Well, you get to God's will because it's right here. God's will is right here all the time. But it's, are you listening? And do you want to hear? Because like Jonah, yeah, like Jonah. He told Jonah, hey, go get on that boat and you going to go over here and preach the word. Jonah said, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want no parts of that, right? So when he got on that boat, he got swallowed up by a whale. So therefore, he was humbled. And then when he came out that well, he went on and did what God asked you to do. So I think part of this is patience, right? Just because you begin to execute don't mean that your opportunity is coming as soon as you begin to execute, because there's a word here that you got to tie in. It's consistency, being consistent. That's what brings everything together, because if you just do it for a little bit and then you go away, that's, you're not putting no real, you're not putting that, you're not manifesting that. So that's another big part along with consistency, is you have to manifest these things daily. I want to be a flower farmer. And every day I want to be a flower farmer. When I look in the mirror, I want to do bees, and what am I going to do today to achieve that? What am I going to do today? What small steps can I do today to get there?
Oh, so now you're talking about identity, which I love, right? It's looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a flower farmer, I'm a beekeeper, and beekeepers keep bees. And flower farmers show up and they fertilize and they water and all that stuff, right? And therefore I am. So I love that you go back to the identity of, like, who do I want to be? Like, who did God create me to be? What am I choosing to be? And what are the consistent steps in doing that, right? I mean, we know that in farming and gardening, if you don't water at consistent intervals, the plants die, right? If you're not
Right,
taking
right.
care, showing up consistently, you're not going to get the fruit that you want. And I've always really loved gardening and farming metaphors, because they just do such a great job of explaining the concepts that we're talking about, right? So you also talked about this element of, like, surrender, right? Like, you went through all of this stuff. you had some people who loved you, who spoke truth to you, and you made a decision to surrender to something bigger than you and follow your life purpose. So I love it's like you're doing that stuff was you planting the seed of like, I'm choosing to be this, right? You letting go of all that stuff that wasn't serving you, the bad behavior, all that stuff. It was like weeding the soil to make sure it's healthy, right? But then, even though you're consistently watering and fertilizing and doing all that stuff, the sunlight, the air, that's out of your control. That's like magic, right? I mean, literally, like the bud coming up is magic. And I think that's why I love this metaphor so much because so many people think like I have to be in control from A to Z, but I'm like, you have to leave space for the surrender and for the magic. So
Absolutely.
what does it look like for you? Like, and one thing I love about the show Growing Floret is she talks very openly about when like there's disease and when there's pests and like all the stuff they have to cut and throw out and stuff. So how has that been like for you when you come across conflict like that of like there's something goes wrong with the bees or something goes wrong with the flowers? Like how do you overcome that adversity?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Because let me tell you something. The bees drive me absolutely crazy all the time because you got your plan and they got their plan, right? This flower farming, beekeeping is full of roadblocks, right? It's full of trial and error. It's full of roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And it's not all peachy. Oh, it's not all great, right? So you got to be willing to take the punches as they come, right? But like Florette knows, it's what you're putting in. And sometimes we may think we're putting in all we got and we're not putting in half of what we're supposed to, right? So therefore we're expecting these great results, but we don't get these great results. So then we get discouraged and then anxiety wants to set in and stuff like that. But it's the attitude of, okay, I didn't get it this year. Okay, that didn't go right. So what did I learn? Right? And how do I take that information and apply it for next year so that these same mistakes don't happen again? I mean, it's definitely not an easy field. I mean, literally, I've had situations where, I've had 6 beehives. They're healthy, they're thriving, and then I come out 3 weeks later and I don't have no bees at all. They didn't took off. And you spend so much money on this thing, and it's like, Lord, wow, like man, I don't want to do this no more. But it's like, no, you. These are things that make you stronger. These are the tests that you have to go through in order to get to that person who's producing 10,000 pounds of honey, who's producing, so many flowers that make your head spin. Like nobody's getting anywhere without these trials and error. So I think it's up to the individual to understand that whatever you decide to get into, it ain't gonna be easy, and the road's gonna be hard, and you're gonna be tested, and people's gonna laugh at you. People's not gonna believe in you. They're gonna have you questioning yourself. But at the end of the day, you gotta drown all that out. It's just tunnel vision. Hey, I'm gonna be a beekeeper. That's what I know I'm gonna do. That's what I want to do, and I'm not gonna let anybody stop that. I'm not gonna let any type of failure, any type of stress, make me be like, you know what, I don't want to do this no more. Because if I quit, which we know in the Army, there is no form of quitting whatsoever. So if I quit, I'm not gonna be able to see what the end looks like. And I've been in it so long now to where I got to see how this thing ends up. I've got to see it. So, for anybody who's listening, man, you have to face problems and stress and all this stuff just like David faced Goliath. I mean, it's the same metaphor. It's the same thing.
Oh my gosh. I love that. So I love all of that so much. And just to start with David, you just reminded me of like David's whole story is insane, right? So for those who aren't familiar with it, and even if like you're not a Christian, like take it as a proverb or whatever, but this man, it was like when the guy doing the anointing of the next king comes out and all the brothers are laid up, like David's not even included because his family's like, he's just like he's over there tending the sheep because he's not that important. And the guy's like, no, like you're missing a son, right? Like he was forgotten. And then he was promised he was going to be king. And then he got hunted by another king that was trying to kill him. And like I always imagine being in that situation of if I was David, I would have been like, God, like, but you said I was going to be king. Like, why am I being hunted? Why am I going through all these trials, right? It's like a whole journey to get to that place. And even when David did, David wasn't innocent 100% of the time.
Not by no means.
He did some
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
He was wild.
Super wild. But all that is to illustrate like the love that God has for us, and that even when we mess up, like God's still there and he still has good things, right? But all that to say, you said something that it was like a tractor beam on me. You said, we think we're putting it all in, but we're really only putting in half the effort. And I find this to be so true of so many people. Like, people who, let's say they're starting a business, they'll do all this research, right? And I know I did this in the beginning too, where I'm like, I'm working really hard every day and I'm like learning about business. But then my coach was like, how many leads did you send out this week? And I'm like, zero. And it's like, well, if you need to make revenue, like if you're not making revenue, this is a hobby. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not a hobby. This is a business, right? So what has to happen for you in your head, or like what did have to happen for you to realize like, oh, maybe I'm not putting in as much effort as I thought I was? Like how do you grow that mindset to just consistently grow your capacity?
It comes to just making a decision. You just have to make a decision. This is what I want. That's it. And nobody else, nobody has the power to snipe that. You don't give anybody no room. And a part of that too is who you're surrounding yourself with, right? So if you got this big dream and this big goal and you're shooting for the stars, right? But the people around you are not aligned, you're not going anywhere, right? Because they're going to drag you down. But like, if you, God has placed people around me that don't let me forget what I'm supposed to be doing. Does that make sense?
That makes
So
perfect sense.
it makes it easier for me to keep that mindset. But once again, I'm a Hickerson. That's my last name. And just to throw this out there, I'm adopted. So that name was given to me. So that's another part of why I work at who I am and why I do what I do, because we live in a small community, a small town, and my name, my last name, it's big here. You know, people respect the last name Hickerson. So I have something to live up to, right? And so a lot of that too is what fuels me, is what drives me, is what pushes me to be like I was adopted. I came from a place of nothingness, right? God rest my birth parents, but I came from a not so good place. But there were people who say, you know what, we're gonna take this kid that's not ours, we're gonna give him our name, and we're gonna raise him and put enough, you know, we're gonna save this kid's life. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So my story is just unique, that I have pieces like that keep me driven, keep me not quitting, keep my mind to where when these hard times come, it's like I don't care. I don't care. You can strip me of all my money. You can strip me of my house. You can strip me of my cars. I'm still going to find myself doing what I know I'm supposed to do.
That is so good. And it's so true, right? I love that you said that for a lot of reasons, but because so often we focus on like the tangible elements of what life can offer, right? The money, the power, the prestige, like whatever it is. But the reality is that when we are attached to those items that provide external validation, that's when like our foundation is shaky. So when I hear somebody that says, you could take it all away, I'm still going to be me and I'm still going to be doing what I do. And God is still going to bless that.
100%.
Like it is so powerful and so amazing. And I also, my husband and I, we have these types of conversations, and it's just like we are so thankful for what we have. And at the same time, we're like, it could all go away today and we would be more than okay. We'd be like, okay, like what's the next thing? Where are we going? Like, what are we building next? Clean slate. And I really also wanted to impress on the listener your story. Like, one of the things that I love so much about it is, especially coming from the Army, again, a space of anger, conflict, scarcity mindset, do more with less kind of thing. I, having lived in that space myself as a veteran, And also growing up to a certain degree with a little bit of toxic humility, right? Because I think to a certain degree, a lot of us are taught like you should be humble and just be of service and like it's not about you. And so, like, degrading and like self deprecating myself and not fully understanding like who I am and my true value was something I didn't realize was happening. And flowers have been a very interesting source of shifting and changing in my journey because I remember back in the day, like in my family, I remember my dad telling, or like a story came up where it was like, well, your mom doesn't like flowers, getting flowers because you cut them and so they're dying and like she doesn't want them. So for years I was like, that makes total sense. Like let the flowers live, right? But then the more I grew into that, I was like, I want more beauty in my life, right?
There you go.
Which is different than in the military where it's like it's all about survival. Like beauty is a thing you can't aspire to in the military or in government service. But the I am so attracted, and I do not have a green thumb. Like I'm trying, but I just need more flowers. Like whether I'm walking or whether I'm buying them. And I think a lot of people feel like they don't deserve flowers. They don't deserve beauty. And I'm curious if you ever experience that. Like living in scarcity mindset and kill all the time too. I'm surrounded by beauty and connection. Like what had to flip in your mind to say, I, Edward, deserve this for me?
Man, so you already said it though, the beauty of the flowers, right? So when I first started on this journey, I hated myself. I didn't love who I was at all. But once you start seeing the flowers bloom, the color, the overall situation, it puts back life. And then it removes your self doubt because it's like, you know what? I just took this seed, put it in the dirt, and raised this thing, right? So your confidence builds. You're like, oh, well, if I can do this for one, I can do this for 100. So, like, I felt like every time I went out there, cut flowers, made a bouquet, I mean, I would get these butterflies. I would have, hair standing up my arms. It's like, wow, what is this, right? But so excited, right? And then seeing people's response when you walk in and you hand them their bouquet and you tell them thank you, they light up like a Christmas tree. So when you see them light up, you're like, oh yeah, I know I'm in the right place. I know that I did that. I know that when I left, hey, they might not buy flowers again, but I know that they got happiness in their soul for the day, and so beauty in the flowers, there's beauty in watching the bees do their thing. All that stuff is given just as much as you are given. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I love that so much for so many reasons. You actually reminded me of the movie Bed of Roses with Christian
Mhm.
Slater from like I think it was the late 80s or maybe the early 90s. I remember watching that movie and being like, I want to deliver flowers. Like because and he talks about this in the movie, right? He's like it doesn't matter what's happened. Like people have had people die. There's hard things happening in their lives, and you show up at their doorstep with a thing of flowers. Like it's the best job on the planet. That's amazing. And it reminds me of so one of the things we talk about in my business practice with the people I get to serve is like I believe that God or the universe, whatever people want to call it, like sprinkles little breadcrumbs of their
Mhm.
destiny in their past. So for me, like that bed of roses, like again, tractor beam, it was like God was like, this is going to be in your future. Even though I didn't touch flowers for 2+ decades after I watched that movie, I can see like when I was younger, parts of my life that seemed like they didn't quite fit all of a sudden one day it all overlapped and I was like, oh, like this is kind of crazy. Like now I see what God was doing this whole time. Did you ever have any breadcrumbs like that? Like, I mean, I know you mentioned with your grandparents, so that's a really big one, right? Of like growing up, going back into the farm and grabbing things. But were there other things on your journey that you can look back now and be like, I see how they were pointing me to my true purpose?
To be honest with you, nobody knew what my purpose. People was like, man, we know he gonna do something, but we don't know what it is. My parents and I were just excited that I made it through 12 years of the army. Okay, that's so. It wasn't until like I turned 34 that I even understood what purpose even meant, right? So it's like I can't say that there are little breadcrumbs that led me there. I just know that I'm so thankful that I found it. Because if you don't find it, you will walk around this earth lost. And you'll just be making decisions and just living but not existing. Or
Yeah,
existing but not living. I
totally.
will say this though, the whole Florette show, real quick. I literally knew nothing about florets. Nothing about florets. I just know I wanted to grow flowers and do bees. I didn't know nothing about florets. So my sixth grade teacher, Miss Stone, came to me and said, I got this book. I think you should read it. And I was like, yeah, okay. Okay. So I took it and it sat in my back seat for a little bit because I was like, I'll read it some other time. But one day I grabbed that book and I just opened it up. And as I started getting through the pages, I thought, oh, hold on now. What? So as we start getting through the pages, I start, looking at what she's doing. It's like the game being given. It's like this big playbook opening up, right? And so I read the book and I'm like, okay, this is a game changer. Cause I know I wanted to grow flowers, but I didn't know it was to this extent, right? I didn't know you could get down in flowers to this extent. Well, long story short, Miss Stone came back and said, hey, Florette is doing a scholarship. I think you should apply for it. I thought, I ain't apply for that. Me? Like, how is she gonna pick me? Like, she gonna pick me? Nah, that ain't gonna happen. And so, like, 2 days before the deadline came up to do this, I had to do a 150-word essay. So 2 days before, I'm like, I don't know, going back and forth. So I called a friend of mine, and she said, if you want to apply for the scholarship, apply for it. But when you do it, speak from your heart, and it will come. I thought, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. That's nonsense, whatever. But then when I got ready to sit down and do my essay, I literally spoke from my heart and gave that essay all that I had. 2 months go by, 3 months go by. So then, they're like, well, we're about to announce the winners, right? 6,000 people applied for this scholarship from all over the world, right? And they're like, congratulations, you won. How does this even happen? So look, the show's not even a part of the applicant. The show's not even involved. There's no mention of me being on the show. Like that is not even a part of it, just a scholarship, right? So 4 weeks, 5 weeks go by after I found out I won, and I'm just excited through the roof. They come back and say, hey, we like your story so much. We want to know if we can come out to Henderson and record. Now, listen, 6,000 people from all over the world applied for this scholarship, right? And somehow my words stood out, right? So it's like, if that ain't a testimony, right? If that ain't an indicator that if you follow this right here, man, everything else is gonna happen. But you gotta be patient, right? So, I end up on the show. I end up being able to take the course, which was great, gave me a lot of insight, and it's been great ever since. But I'm just saying that's just an opportunity that I wasn't expecting, didn't even really believe I could get. You get what I'm saying? So it's like what you project is what you're gonna get.
100%. Oh my gosh, that is so good. I love that so much. And it's interesting because it's so easy to fall into that mindset of, but who am I? Like, first, it's like the hurdle of, like, why would I apply for this? And then it's like, well, why would they pick me? And then it's like, okay, all I have to do is my best, which is right from the heart, and just tell them my story and, like, send it off in the mail and just see what God comes back with. And then God comes back with not only the scholarship, but then the show and, like, all the other magic that comes out of that, right? But you still had to have the courage to say, my name's Edward and I'm going to tell my story. And if they see me as worthy or not, I'm still worthy.
And
That,
what's the worst that gonna happen? They
right.
say no. Then you just reapply the next year, and you keep applying until they say yeah.
Right.
But
No, 100%. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Yeah, so it's really funny. The flowers drew me in first, but then the beekeeping I think is a really interesting element of the story because I actually historically have been deathly afraid of bees, like completely irrational fear. And it's funny
yeah,
because when I was active duty, I was actually a bodyguard to a senior Pentagon official. And I was like
okay,
the head bodyguard in charge of a team of bodyguards. And I remember one time we were in Italy and it was a weekend and my protectee decided to go to a vineyard and they're getting a tour of these beautiful sites. This bee comes and I'm like and my protectee is like, are you kidding me right now, Alani? Like, you'll take a bullet for me, but you're scared of a bee? And I'm like, Superman has this kryptonite, man. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, right? And like, so it's interesting because beekeeping has been attracting me more and more. There is an element of like, I want to conquer this fear, but also the key to my business, the saying that I have is what you think is your weakness is the key to unlocking your greatest power. So,
yes,
like for me being female, small, brown, and I look very young for my age, I thought those things were weakness, but through those experiences and those elements of who I am, God showed me actually you have the element of surprise. I'm going to put you in crazy jobs that you never could have imagined. And through that, I was like, oh, actually, like what I thought was my weakness gave me an advantage tactically, operationally. I was
hmm
underestimated to the benefit of the mission, right? So, if you could identify like what you once thought was like a weakness or like something that invoked guilt or shame in your story that now is like God transformed it and now it's kind of your superpower. Do you have anything like that?
I'll just stick in the category of the bees. Like I'm with you, right? I could have cared less about a bee at first. I didn't want to be around them. Don't want to be getting stung, right? And I've been stung hundreds of times. It is not as bad as you think, but it is bad. But I think that's a part. I think that's the best part of this is conquering your fear. Conquering your fear, because the truth is, yeah, they're a little. The bees can be very angry, and yes, they can kill you if you're not protected. If you're not paying attention, things can get out of hand really quick. But that's a part. That's the part about this that I love so much because bees have helped tame my problems. When you get into working bees, your mind has to be calm, right? Because bees can sense when you're scared. And when you're scared, they use that to their advantage, right? So you have to not only calm yourself, but there's chaos going on, right? The bees are buzzing, they're loud, they're quiet, they're loud. You don't know if they're all about to jump on you. You got some of them that's trying to get you, but they can't because you got your protective gear on. And so that has been a building tool for me mentally, though, right? Because I'm having to go in this high pressure situation and be successful. Go in here, inspect the bees, do my job, and it's just I lost my train of thought. But at the end of the day, when you go in there, it's like the army. I was a gunner going on mission. Everything could be a bomb. Everything. No, and I don't think the United. I don't think the world understands. I don't think they understand, right? So, like going into the beehive is almost the same thing, right? It's scary. You don't know what unexpected thing is going to happen, right? You're paranoid. You just want to get in here and get out. But what the bees have done, they've slowed me down. They caused me to not be so anxious when pressure is so high. They've helped me just dial it down. So now, 4 years in, I'm able to go in with no fear, confident, and do my job and come on out of there. Nobody getting stung. I understand the game now, right? But the bees had to teach me their way. And that comes by way of getting stung. Because they gonna teach you the respect. You gonna gain some respect with them. They gonna teach you that. So, man, the bees have like broken me down and then built me up. Because when I first started, I was in there and out, scared to death. Didn't even know what I was doing. But like, the Lord blessed me with a mentor out of nowhere that came in and really kind of helped me get a hold of things. So it's like, man, you can't be afraid of the things you think you're afraid of,
Mm,
right? This life is about having no fear. You know, you
Amen.
cannot be out here and be scared. But I think with everybody's different. You know, not everybody is going to have a no fear attitude. You know, not everybody's going to have this strong mindset, but it can be achieved, but you have to put in the work.
Mm, yes. Oh my gosh, that is so true. And I really appreciate what you're saying. Again, it comes back to respect and surrender for the bees is what you're saying, right? Like I was scared. I didn't, it was in and out, right? Like anything could happen. The hypervigilance that you alluded to with being a gunner, right? I totally get that. I still remember being in therapy and I was explaining something, and my therapist is like, hypervigilance, is not normal. And I'm like, oh, it's not? Like, this is my 24/7. Because to your point, like when you're bodyguarding, when you're deployed in Iraq, Afghanistan, whatever, it's like 24/7, like, where's the threat coming from? What do I have to do to mitigate it, right? But there's a time and a place for that. But when you bring that back to a non-wartime setting, it's hard to turn off because it's part of your operating system, right? So it sounds like you had to get
Right.
stung a couple of times for the bees to be like, hey, be present. Be present right here. We're going to teach you some stuff. And it's so funny. I don't have bees, but I have a police canine that I work with. And it was similar thing. Like I thought I was coming out. I was like, I'm gonna be the handler. I'm gonna teach this dog. Can I just
No,
say?
that dog will teach you.
Oh no. We know who the smartest one in this relationship is, and it's not me. I mean, I have been humbled by that dog. Every time we mess up, it's me messing up. It's never her. I've had to learn trust, like two-way. Like I have to trust that she's telling me the truth. She has to trust that I'm gonna take care of her and protect her and provide for her. And I agree with you that slowing down of like, I'm not God, I'm not in control all the time,
Yeah.
right? That surrender. I love that so much. So I know we have a couple minutes left, and there's one more topic I wanted to ask you about because your story is so inspiring and it's so like polar opposite of where you came from. And you mentioned you did 12 years active duty, which
Mhm.
is unusual to meet somebody who leaves at 12 years because I left at 12 years too, because retirement happens at 20. So once you're past 10, most people are like, are you crazy? Are you dumb to get out?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because I got it. I can't wait till you go ahead.
Oh, yes, sir. And I know someone's listening to you feeling inspired, but they're working in corporate or some other crazy job, and their dream is 180. And they're like, how do I leave the security of what I know to follow what's in here and be like Edward? So I'd love to hear what led you to leave at 12 years the secure golden parachute that the Army provides financially to
Right.
chase a pipe dream of flowers and bees.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it was August 10th of 2009. We were put on a pretty high value mission, I'll say. If I'm not mistaken, there was five, four operating base that had went black on supplies. So I'm in support platoon. My trade is 92 Foxtrot, right? You know, in support platoon, you got truck drivers and fuelers, ammo. We're all one platoon, right? But they kind of take your best or your crazy and put them in that gunner's hatch. That's kind of how you get on security team, right? Yeah. Y'all know y'all wrong for that. No, I'm
Yeah.
just playing. So anyhow, so this particular mission was kind of different because we was in briefings all day, and all they was talking about is we're probably gonna get hit and how we're gonna react. It was to the point so much activity was going on this one road to where they sent a drone with us when we left. This particular night, I was not in the gunner's hatch. I was in the driver's seat though, so I was driving my platoon sergeant right in the MRAP. So we're headed down MSR Tampa, headed to wherever our location is, and we get hit by 10 daisy chain IEDs. Pressure plated, so that means that somebody was sitting off however far out, and they cell phone detonated every bomb as we were traveling forward. So I think we had about 8 wounded that evening, right? So where I was in this situation, the word came through for us to move because we need to go assess what wounded we have at the front of our convoy, right? So we get ready to move, and the lieutenant comes on the radio and says, "Stop! Send the wrecker around you." So we stopped. The wrecker came around and started heading towards the front. I'd say about 100 feet after they got past us, they got blown up, right? So I'm like, what the hell? So anyway, we get them out of that wrecker, and we push forward to the front. As we get to the front, we've got 6 wounded, and battalion is telling us, hold tight, we got to find you another grid for this bird to land, because every time the medevac tried to come in, the fire that we just put out from the ID kept kicking, and they're like, we're not going to land there. So battalion's taking forever to designate a safe landing zone, right? Or a safe LZ. So my lieutenant said, screw that. We're going to put these wounded on a stretcher, and we're going to carry these guys about the length of a football field to this point out here in the desert, right? So we load up the wounded. I'm on one stretcher. I think the interpreter was next to me, 2 other soldiers in the back. My lieutenant, fireman carried one guy, and we take off. Full sprint the whole way. We get to the bird, we get the wounded on the bird, takes off, and I'm sitting there emotional, tired, drained. We get back, and people are like, y'all was out there too long. And just, it was a lot of negative. We wasn't greeted like, so glad you made it safe. It was like, y'all jacked up, y'all was on the battlefield too long, blase, 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 right? So I teed me off a little bit. So we go to this after action review the next day, and this major comes in, him and all his freaking glory, and he starts talking about what's the golden rule on the battlefield. And we're all like, we don't know. He's like, well, you got 1 hour to get on the battlefield and get off the battlefield. Well, first of all, sir, it's 150 vehicles out here. Are you crazy? Nobody's getting out of the kill zone that quick.
Yeah.
And second of all, why did it take you so long to give us a doggone grid point, right? So, long story short, people that had no act in that heroism, the act of carrying the wounded to the bird and all that, some people that wasn't involved in that got bronze star. But the soldiers that carried those wounded to the bird got a combat action badge. And that broke me. Because as a soldier, you sit back and you watch people get awards all through the deployment for going above and beyond the call of duty in situations just like that. And I'm not looking for the fame or nothing like that. But at the end of the day, the wounded don't get to the bird unless we move them there.
Right.
So at that moment, I just said, man, you know what? What am I fighting for? Why am I here?
Right.
You know, if I'm going to put my life on the line like this, and you just going to give me some old combat action by, oh, yeah, you was engaged by the enemy and that's it. No, you just pretty much poured a big old thing of coffee on what we did, pretty much. You know, you just stepped on what we did, right? And that was the one time in this war that I got to experience patriotism, in my opinion, at its finest hour, right? That's the time in which I felt like, you know what? If I take nothing away from these 3 tours that I've taken, this experience right here, I got to see what it feels like to act in courage under an impossible situation, right? And then they turn around and just, you was there too long. You had no business in the desert running with the wounded. If y'all would have just waited, we would have gave y'all a different grid point. Man, get out of here with that. You know, so that's where my self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and all these things started taking over, because how can I as a sergeant now lead when it just made me second guess every decision from that moment forward? So it's time to go. It's time to go. Army's changing, because when I came in, you still had to shine your boots. You know, your uniform had to be pressed. We got away from that.
Yep.
And then you're a sergeant, you fight to get this rank, right? But you get no respect, because when I came in, soldiers stood at parade rest, you know, these different things. But as I was getting ready to get out, soldiers ain't getting parade rest for nobody.
Yeah.
They don't talk to you the way they want to. And you're just a glorified specialist. That was the temperature as I was getting out. And I thought, no.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. So, I ended up getting med boarded.
Okay.
And that's when I took my exit. I think I was actually supposed to go to Afghanistan. And 2 days prior to us leaving, they pulled me off and said, "You're not going."
Mm. Edward, I am so honored that you would share that story. And it hits me in the feels because I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny, I did a whole blog post that kind of blew up about a similar experience. So, my first deployment, we do counterintelligence and human intelligence. So, I'm going out with my briefcase full of money, meeting with informants, finding out where Al Qaeda is, and like all that stuff, right? And long story short, everybody around me was getting bronze stars, but I didn't. And I remember being so broken about it. And looking back, what I realized now that I didn't know then is I had allowed that lack of action to define my value as a person, right? And I
No,
think
for
that's
real.
that's what you're getting at, right? It's not about the medal, it's not about the recognition it's about we are in service, literally putting our lives on the line for something bigger than us. And not only are you not recognizing the effort and the love and the blood, sweat, and tears, but now you're giving me crap because I was out too long. And I think what you're really saying is you understood in that moment, this environment does not value me the way I should be valued. And I understood that as well. It took me a very long time, right? Because again, growing up in like, especially in the church or service oriented spaces, it's like you have to sacrifice and give all of yourself for the mission. It took me a long time to be broken of that and be like, I treat everybody the same way I want to be treated. It's about mutual respect, human dignity. I don't care what you do or who you are. If you're alive and you're human, I love you. And the military is not that space. And then when you try to fight for your value, you're told all kinds of things about why didn't you come back on time? And, they're chastising you for it. And I'm curious, one more just question, because I know this is something that is at the crux of this topic that a lot of people I work with struggle with, which earlier you said, I'm a service oriented person, right? I'm here to serve. And I agree, like, the best humans just want to be of service. But when you do pour all of yourself out without filling your cup up or seeing your own value, you end up burned out, depleted, pissed off, right? That's when you're like,
For sure.
right? And so, how did you shift after the military to where you are of service, but you're clearly a person who exudes joy? So, your cup is getting filled, right? You're in an environment, you got yourself out of an environment. I love, again, the flower analogy of the flower was not thriving in that environment, right? So, we moved that seed to better soil and now it's thriving. But how do you be of service without burning yourself out?
That You know what? That is a good one because my job currently, I work for a funeral home, right? And my goal, not my goals, but my duties there are pretty intensive or can be intensive in terms of what I do for our deceased, right? But in a place that's supposed to be so down and so like sad, I find joy in that because it's like I have the opportunity to give dignity and respect to someone, right? Before their loved one gets to experience them for that last time. And so that act in itself gives me so much joy. If I could do the job for free, I probably would, to be honest with you. Just because of what I get from it, right? And people are like, "Man, you work at a funeral land. That's crazy." No, it's not. It's not. I get when people come in our funeral home and they may be feeling at their worst because the person that they love the most aren't here anymore, right? I take joy in knowing that if I bring you a thing of water, if I'm able just to give you a tissue, right? If I'm able to put my arm around you and tell you, it's going to be okay. These things are what drive me. So, like, finding joy in the things you do, it's just, I don't know how else to explain it. It's just what I do, you know?
Right. But again, you're like, this is me. And I find the joy in the opportunity. It doesn't matter where you're planted, you're going to find the joy, is what I'm hearing you say. That's just who you are, right? And again, I love that your message is so simple. It's follow what's in here, follow what's in your heart. When you know what that is, never quit. And even when you're in the darkest of circumstances, death, right? You find the opportunity to connect and serve and love. Oh my gosh, that is so good. Edward, I've taken up so much more of your time than you so
No, that's
graciously
fine.
allowed.
That's fine.
This has been so incredible. I'm so thankful that you said yes. I was literally so excited when you wrote me back. I'm like, dear Jesus, like I just want Edward to come on my podcast. And you're like, yes, and I was like, oh my God, babe. I was telling my husband, I'm like, he said yes. Like, so thank you. I know people are going to want to
Thank
connect with
you.
you. So where can they find you?
So you can find me at Hickerson Honey and Flowers on Instagram, Edward Hickerson on Facebook. Those are the two places where you can find me. And whoever you are, if you're listening, if you got, an issue or you need some encouragement or anything, feel free to direct message me and I will answer as soon as I can. I won't leave anybody hanging. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Still being of service, even when we're sharing Instagram and Facebook handles. We are going to link those in the show notes for you guys so you can access. You can also purchase his delicious honey. Just DM him on Instagram or Facebook to buy some. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Edward. We're going to include the link to Floret as well as Hives for Heroes, which Edward is a member of. So if you're a veteran and you want to get into beekeeping, we'll connect you with those guys. Guys, if you're looking for more resources, Edward talk about figuring out what your purpose is. I have a free life purpose exercise freebie on my website, mightysparrowcoaching.com. It has video prompts to help guide you so you can figure out what your purpose is. Or you can check out my best-selling book, The Least of Us, How Your Imposter Syndrome Points to Your Greatest Power. Until next time, humble warriors, please remember the world needs who you were made to be. Thank you for joining us today on this journey to discover how you can harness your fear to work for you. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us, How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at Alani at mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI at mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.